to the front of the net. Puck work to the outside to Eklund. Howe back to Eklund again. Kerr sparring with Stevens in front. Eklund creeps behind. Out in front to Curry. Scores! Tim Kerr and the Flyers are perfect on 5-on-3s. They are 3 for 3. Get their first power play goal of the night and tie the game.
Everybody, it's Isaiah, just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit SummitPublicAdjusters.com. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, you can reach them at 215-752-0560 or just visit Summit with 1T, publicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.
Okay, and we are back. It is Isaiah, and welcome to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 140. Wow. We're going to have an exciting time tonight. We have a really special panel, and we're looking forward to this show. But just a reminder before we get rolling here, the O&B Puckcast can be followed on Twitter at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We have a Facebook page, YouTube channel. Just plug in O&B Puckcast on YouTube. If you could subscribe, follow, whatever applies to YouTube or any of the 12 or 13 different podcast platforms, we do appreciate it. And if you could give us a 5-star rating, if we've earned that, we do appreciate that as well. But either way, subscribe because it moves us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts. And as always, we truly appreciate your listenership. And with that, Dan has the night off. Chef received a call from work. He is someone who helps people who are having problems with their homes. And he goes out there and helps them with their insurance and stuff like that. So tonight it is Isaiah flying solo, but don't worry. We got 2 special guests. Our buddies from High and Wide are here. First, we're going to introduce Jim Iacovone. How are you?
Dude, I'm great. I'm stoked to be back on the show, man. Thanks for having me.
Great. And first time on the O&B Puckcast, Jack Smith. How you doing?
Doing good. Popping my cherry. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Feeling good. I should have said hi, man. But anyway. Well, the O&B is going to go high and wide tonight. I don't know where that's going to take us. It's going to be like a Travis Konecny shot on the power play. You know how that goes, right?
High and wide, yep.
90%. Corsi against. Anyway, all right. So the latest from the NHL, gents, is according to Der Spiegel or Jackie Spiegel from NHL.com, the NHL is not pausing the season. Future shutdowns and a case-by-case basis is probably how they're going to go. 12 more games will be postponed to avoid cross-border travel before the holiday break. The NHL and the NHLPA are actively discussing whether they are not going to go to the 2022 Olympics and expect to make an announcement in the coming days. And that is the latest from the NHL. Gents, Jack, I'll start with you. What's your, without dwelling on it too long, because we got the Flyers and that's depressing enough. What do you think about how the NHL is handling this compared to like the NFL or some of the other leagues?
Yeah, I guess I'm glad that they're not pausing the season, as whether you believe that makes sense or not. I'm just glad that they're going to keep playing games. The one thing that I keep thinking of, and I'm sure a lot of people are, is I am almost 100% convinced now that there is no way they're going to the Olympics. It just makes too much sense with the games they're going to have to make up and that time frame being available on top of the 2 weeks, which became 5 weeks. If something happens over there, there's too much bad and too much positive, if you could use that word rather, for what they would need to make up all these postponed games. It's a little odd that certain teams are being shut down for like just a week until Christmas or after, and some teams are just a few games, but whatever gets it working, whatever gets them to keep playing. And then sure enough, I'm sure we'll be making it up when we should be playing in the Olympics. I'm sure there'll be some hockey in the States.
Yeah. I think the feeling seems to be, it's like, hey, we gave it a shot. We vaccinated everybody, like 98% of all 3 leagues or 95%. The shot is not perfect. It's going to save a lot of lives, and that's a great thing. But we got to get on with life. We just can't stop. This is not a dress rehearsal. Jim?
Yeah, it's so Steve Yzerman came out, I believe, yesterday and had some words for what's going on, and I'm kind of on board with what he had to say. It's why are we testing guys who aren't sick? A lot of what's going on doesn't make sense to me. As far as the Olympics go, I don't think you can go, right? Like let's say somebody does test positive over there, and they're over there for 5 weeks. I mean, how long is the Olympic break supposed to be in the NHL? Is it 2 weeks?
I thought it was like 3 weeks or something.
3 weeks. Okay, so even then, I mean, the break is 3 weeks. Let's say, I don't know, Steven Stamkos goes over there, tests positive. He's stuck in China for 5 weeks. The Lightning are going to play without Steven Stamkos for 2 weeks. I just don't think it's too much of a risk to send them over there to play in the Olympics. Sad to say, because the Olympics mean a lot to some of these guys. But just with the current environment in the world right now, I mean, and those protocols, it just doesn't make sense to go. I mean, especially with the league, you're going to have to make up games now. So it's what comes first, right? Like the team that's paying you to play hockey or the Olympics. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue. I remember I lived down in Florida, and Phil Esposito was on Tampa radio, always railing against, why do we shut down our league for 3 weeks, and what kind of benefit, to sell the game, and the game is great here and all that. But obviously a lot of it's really driven by the Players Association. If the owners had their way, they probably would never go. Right. For revenue reasons. And of course, there's the idea that they've lost so much revenue with these 2 truncated seasons. So, there's a lot on the table there. I think Jack is right. I don't think they're going to go, and I'd be surprised. But, stranger things have happened. But
that's for sure.
Getting to the Philadelphia Flyers, as that situation was COVID-19 will work itself out, and we'll find out a lot more this week. They just went through a 10-game losing streak, as we all know, which ushered in the Bags and the Bag Nation, which I know we'll talk about. But they've also just gotten through a period where they've gotten points in their last 5 games. They're playing a little bit better since AV got fired. Mike Yeo takes over. Jack, what's your feeling about how the season's gone? Can it be salvaged? What's the vibe that you're seeing now that Yo is taking over for the last several games?
It's cute. I appreciate it, I guess. I don't see it being a long-term thing. The coach, we've been through so many coaches. Coach definitely had something to do with it for sure. You look at Sanheim's play right away, how much how better he's played. But overall, I have major issues with the team, with the leadership group, I'll say, the lack of accountability, which just seems to never change. Right now, we're going through a stretch of quote-unquote easier teams, and we're sneaking by. It's nice to read, they got 5 points in the last 3 games or whatever. But, really the only real good win when I look at the strength of schedule was the Devils game. Other than that, they're getting by, which is better than losing 10 in a row. I get that. But as far as making the playoffs and being anything more than a bubble team, if they're even that, and this is considering the return of Ellis, if he can stay healthy, I don't see this group of players, the way they're constructed, being anything that good. And it's very negative, and I get that, but just they're too prone to fall to pieces too easily. Whether it be injury or they're just mentally weak, when things start going bad, they really can't dig themselves out, and they're going to start playing real good teams again. They have a real good division, and when the Rangers and the Capitals come around again, I think we're going to get a real swift kick in the ass that not every game from here on out is going to be against the Devils and the Montreal Canadiens and whatnot. And
it's hard.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, I come out in the first period last night, and that was the best hockey I'd seen them play all year. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but it's Ottawa. But then when Ottawa pushes back, just like you're saying, it speaks to who they've been for like a decade. It's when things don't go their way, man. They just they have this jellyfish for a spine,
What irks me is it's like a huge ask for them to play back-to-back good, solid periods, let alone games. And they're not a team who can afford to be giving away points. So the fact that they just shootout rolls around, they're just like, okay, we're done. That's silly. You need every single point, especially in this division. That's embarrassing within its own right. And the word embarrassing is probably going to be used a lot tonight when I talk about the Flyers, which is where the bags came from. But I just can't see them stringing together enough solid efforts and wins that are really going to put them over. I guess there's a small chance of other teams falter or their injuries, or they just stay afloat enough where they could flirt with the playoffs. But I see, much like what I saw with the Dave Haxtell era, if they get in, they're probably going to play the top seed. And they're going to get smoked. They're going to get embarrassed again, if they make it at all.
Yeah, if they make it, it's kind of like, well, what, Jim, that's the whole point. Carchidi does an article this week where he has all these anonymous sources, people used to be with the organization, currently in the organization, don't want to be, mention their names and all that. And one of them that struck me was how he talked about, is this the new culture with the Flyers? It's like, well, just make the playoffs. You would expect that from a team I don't know, like Nashville or something back in the day. Even Nashville had higher hopes ever since they went to the final. But it's is this who the Flyers are going to become, unlike what they were under Ed Snyder? It's as daring and bumbling as they could be. They were trying to win a cup and get in that kind of contention. And it's kind of what is their cultural statement coming from the top? And how is that going to filter through the team and the management?
I think you're seeing it. I think what you're seeing with the players and the attitude of the players, I mean, usually that kind of stuff trickles down from the top. I really don't know what to say about the leadership of the team or the direction of the organization. It's being run like a corporation. I think Chuck Fletcher was the safe hire, which is what a corp would do. They wouldn't want to go out and risk anything, take any chances, go out and get the safe guy, build a team that could make the playoffs. And, if they win a round or two, great. But ultimately the goal is to make money. From a fan's perspective, it's extremely disappointing. And Jack mentioned the bags. I mean, that's kind of what the bags represent, something different for everyone, I think. And for me, it's kind of like me throwing my hands up in the air. It's kind of just like, well, I give up. I'm not going to expect anything anymore. I'm just going to watch the Flyers and cover the team and enjoy them that way. Because I think rooting for them and expecting them to win is, you're just kind of setting yourself up to be disappointed, because they're from the top down, it's just a mess, and I don't know, we could sit here. I could easily sit here and go, Flyers are only 4 points out of a playoff spot. We're only in middle of December here. 4 points behind the Wings. They only have two teams in between them. They have 2 games in hand on the Wings. And this and that. I can name all these positive things. But then, you look at the team and it's like, well, Mike Yo's the head coach. And as Jack pointed out, I mean, they're 4-1 in their last 5. But they played the Ottawa Senators, 20 points. They played the Montreal Canadiens, 17 points. they played the New Jersey Devils, who are on a 5-game losing streak, 25 points, and the Phoenix Coyotes, who have 14 points. So you could look for all the positives in the world, but at the end of the day, it's, what's going to happen when they play these Tampa Bay Lightnings and the Colorado Avalanches,
Yeah, that's the thing. Jack, the thing is the Flyers used to be a team that went after the high-end talent. And you look at them now, they really only have one high-end talent. He's going to be 34 next month, and he's on an expiring contract. And everybody else is, but maybe Carter Hart would be considered that going forward. But, I mean, that to me, that's just stands out in bold relief. It's like when you compare them to teams like Vegas have gone after every high-end talent they can get their hands on, and Colorado and Tampa and the top of the league, the Flyers don't really have a chance at all to win a cup. They don't have that ceiling. So it's like that goes back to the organizational source for Carchidi. It says, like, what are we? What are we going to do? Are we just at, let's just make the playoffs and hopefully, anything can happen? Or are they going to start turning this around, realizing after a decade of futility, like, they have to do something different?
Yeah, and it's scary because you go back to a couple of free agencies, and Hayes was, I guess, a nice pickup, but like the Ed Schneider days, they would have been the ones to snag Panarin. Like that's what it used to be. It was all about that. And I look at the team now and I see what Giroux's doing, but I realize how old he is. Hart's great and all. He can only do so much. That's where, I don't want to jump the gun here a little bit, but like where I start to lean towards the rebuild button. I don't think another retool, I'm not there yet, but I don't think another retool is really going to do much for this team because I don't know where you can add. Last year, when the wheels fell off, we hung our hats on, well, at least we'll move on from this player, Voracek, Ghost, whoever. We have assets, we have prospects, we have those kind of players we can move to acquire players that we need, that we could use, that we view as better players. And we did that. We moved out to Nolan Patrickson and Fleet Myers, and here we are with, he's injured, but Ellis and these guys of that nature, and we're exactly where we were last year, losing games by the dozens, but not being able to score, getting blown out. And we expended most of our assets. So it's not working. Like we need to, I don't see what they could possibly do to turn things around. And the thing that's being brought up, the comparison I keep seeing is the St. Louis Blues from a few years ago. They brought in a goalie who was easily their biggest need. We already have that. He's already playing out of his mind. Who's going to come in and just suddenly make this team on offense or something, and just suddenly all their issues are going to be solved like it was with the Blues? I don't see that happening. We don't have Pietrangelo back on D there to take this team and take off and do whatever they got to do. We have way too many holes, way too many players making way too much money in roles where they need to take off and they need to take over for this team, especially when you have injuries. Where's Couturier and Provorov stepping up when we have injuries to Ellis and players of that nature? They've gone silent. They've gone absolute. For whatever reason, Twitter's going off about Sanheim, Ristolainen, where I'm like, JVR, Konechny, Coots, they're all playing terrible. Provorov, why are we talking about that? And these are way too many players I'm naming. It's all that's going to turn around? Don't see it. No way.
But that's just it. You have all these teams that have had injuries like Pittsburgh and all that. And it speaks to the culture. You think about it. It's like when you've never won anything. You mentioned St. Louis. Well, first, a couple things. Number one, that was like the exception, not the rule. Now, what do you want to invest your team in? You want to invest in a formula that is the exception or the rule. So like you said, they had one missing piece. That St. Louis team was bankable as a playoff team, and they won 1 or 2 rounds every year. They just couldn't get over the hump. And they had that hot year, and they went out and did something that Ron Hextall didn't have the balls to do. He went out and got one of his favorite players, Ryan O'Reilly. Instead, we have Kevin Hayes and spent all that money. Ryan O'Reilly is a better player, and it speaks to missed opportunity. Second, you talk about how the high-end talent, about getting this player, getting that player. The Flyers used to be the kind of place where players wanted to play, because they knew the Flyers are always going to win. And people talk about now how, well, Philadelphia's not quite that team anymore. Well, why? Because they don't make those moves. And the other thing is, it's like, yeah, Ryan Ellis will come back. Well, why did the other players here, unlike a team like Pittsburgh, would actually won something. They can lose Crosby, Malkin, and still be in it and playing well. And they have their system, and they have a rock-solid culture. And again, going back to the leadership, the coaching, the whole 9 yards. Flyers don't have any of that. So you can plug in some potholes, right, and get Ryan Ellis, and you can have a nice year this year. It's not going to have anything. It's not going to be sustainable, is what I'm trying to say. So that's the frustrating part. We can, put Band-Aids on this year, but in terms of long-range outlook and the possibility of actually winning a cup, I just don't see it. Jim, what do we say?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you said culture. Because really, what would entice a player to come to Philadelphia over Las Vegas or Tampa Bay or Florida? And then you have teams with current history, current success, like Pittsburgh, Boston, teams like that, Toronto, teams with some cachet. Carolina has Rod Brindamore. Who doesn't want to play for Rod Brindamore today, right? Like, the guy's one of the best coaches in the NHL. He won the award last year, I'm pretty sure. Washington, you have the allure of playing with Alexander Ovechkin. New York, the Rangers, obviously, you have Madison Square Garden. What would today's player want to play in Philadelphia for? Because you can't sell the Broad Street Bullies anymore. You can't sell the family atmosphere that Ed Snyder created, right? They don't have that. So what would make somebody want to play for the Philadelphia Flyers, right? You're going to have to overpay for players. And, I get it. You're going to have to do it anyway in free agency. But having a player choose to play for you, I think is really what you want. How often that happens, I'm not sure. But do you get where I'm coming from? Like,
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the Flyers were actually getting there after like 06, 07. They almost were at that point where they're at now. So what happened? Holmgren got creative. I'll give him credit. I've been very critical of him, but he kind of reignited the flame by signing Briere and making that trade, cleaning out the contracts, and bringing in, Tiemann in and Hartnell, and kind of making this a fun place again. Okay. But then when that ran out, that's it. He punched his ticket. They bring a Hextall in, and he didn't want to rebuild and tear it down to the studs. And as a result of that, we've had a decade. It's probably the worst decade. I followed a team for 52 years. I've never seen anything like this. They're just on a treadmill. They're just going nowhere.
Perfect.
And now they're about, it's just, something has to give. And yet it seems like, Jack, like you were saying, it's like, it doesn't seem like it's going to come from the top. It doesn't seem like it's on the team to really be able to change anything without kind of sweeping the whole thing away and starting over.
Yeah, I mean, when Hextall came in, I thought that was the plan. A lot of us were believers. I know your buddy Dan, our buddy Dan, everybody's buddy Dan. He was drinking the Kool-Aid too. I mean, we all were. Jim bust my balls all the time about how much I was into Hextall and everything. And it's like he just wouldn't go full rebuild, though. He didn't add anything to win now, but he didn't sell everybody. His big trade was like Coburn. He got like a first, a third, and Gudis. But that's it. Like, it was like purgatory. Like, he wouldn't bottom out to get the top elite talent. He wouldn't trade to have more lottery tickets. But you wouldn't do anything at the current level, so we just wasted Claude Giroux's career. And it's just like, now we're really screwed. So that's why I'm thinking the only option really is to rebuild. But I don't think Comcast is going to do it. They're not going to be sending a letter to the fans saying it's going to take a few years, but we're going to do it right. It's not happening. They want to make money. Our big issue is not, they don't spend enough, whatever. They spend enough, I guess, but like, they're not going to take a loss from the Flyers to rebuild it right. And we're going to be stuck in this purgatory of the retooling, at least until Kutz's contract, which just kicks in next year, is probably out, which it sucks because I don't see a way out. Hart can't do it all himself. Drew's only getting older, and everything in between is just fluff. There's nothing real spectacular there, unless you think Denoyer is going to come in and blow the doors off, which I mean, yeah, he's nice, but come on, let's be realistic here.
What is he, like a 5th round pick or something?
Yeah, 4th or 5th, one of those.
4th or 5th round pick. So it's like, so it's a good story based on your expectations, and everything in life is based on expectations. So that's the thing. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road for me. I mean, it's one thing with Drew and making a decision about trading him. That's a whole conversation. To me, the elephant in the room is they signed Sean Couturier for, 8 more years? And again, was it 775?
Yep.
Well, this is almost like a Carter and Richards situation, Jim. It's like his no trade or no move is going to kick in next year. And I'm like, I don't want to go there. I love the player, but what the ceiling is with this team, I mean, you are in a miasma of mediocrity and you ain't going nowhere. And he's going to be begging to get out of here. And then by then he'll be so damn slow. You'll be lucky if you get a 2nd round pick and a 7th defenseman.
That was an incredible comparison that you just made right there with the contracts. And, I didn't think so, Coots is having not a great season after the first couple of weeks. And, some guys are starting to say, hey, maybe we should look at trading Coots. And I'm kind of like, how can you trade a guy after you just signed him? But you just reminded me that the Flyers did that with 2 guys. What is it? A little over 10 years ago now with Carter and Richards. Before their clauses kicked in, they shipped them out. And not that I'm saying I want to trade Coots, but they might be forced into a tough decision now. And his contract, the number is great to get a player of his caliber at that number. Maybe maybe they sneak out maybe a team takes a shot on him and he plays well for another couple of years and. It ends up going the Richards route or something like that. I mean, not as far as the off-ice stuff, but, the play on the ice. It's kind of sad when I think about that because remember how excited we were when they signed Coots for what they got him for? It was kind of like, holy crap, like that was a steal. We were all thinking over 8.5 or over 8 million, whatever. And, we're not even to January yet. And it's like they might have to look at trading Coots before the contract even kicks in. It's pretty crazy.
It is. Hey, Jack, just before you go there, I just wanted to kind of load you up with this too. The team is not built properly. The Flyers always won at center ice. They were always stacked 1, 2, 3 until like the last 10 years. I mean, the plan was to have Schenn, Couturier, and Giroux and all. It just never materialized, okay? And to me, that's their number one need, is a real number one center. Someone who is a threat on the power play, someone who's an offensive force. And they don't have that player right now. So that's the reason why I'm thinking Couturier can't be that guy. Is he a 1C? Yeah, if you had an offensive counterpart with him, maybe like name's not coming to mind, but maybe someone's a little more offensive, maybe not as good defensively as a nice 1-2 punch. But they don't have that. And if they're going to put this thing together, they have to get stronger at center because really this year, what did they do? They come off the street with Derek Brassard. He can't stay healthy. And his play started to go in the toilet. And then you look on defense, more guys off the street with Yandel. Yandel looks like he's not even an NHL player anymore. And 2 guys on waivers with McEwen, who's one of their best players in terms of reaching their ceiling. Patrick Brown, who's, like he's a 13th forward. So, they have so much money invested in guys, and like there's so many big holes on the team, and then a lot of nice extra pieces, like you were saying.
That's the scary part. It's like the guys they just brought in here to fill holes are the guys playing to their best, or the guys you've invested in. Again, apparently it's a lot to ask them to show up and do what they're supposed to do. And the Coots thing really gets to me because I'm on record of saying how great of a contract that was, how great that's going to age because he's the Bergeron type. And while the offensive numbers might start to regress, the defense will always be there, and he makes players around him better. And like you said, not even into the first year of that contract, and all of a sudden I'm praying that he's hurt because there's no way he can be this bad. It's no for his sake. There's no way. And it's like this, and like you said, he was never a top 10 center to begin with, so it's like, what do you really have for that kind of money? We're glad it's not $8.5 million, but it's still a huge chunk of change when you consider Hayes, Coots. That's like $14-15 million between the two of them, and you're hoping one of them's a 2C. So what do you really have firepower-wise? 34-year-old, going to be 34-year-old Claude Giroux at wing. Well, that's wonderful. Farabee's nice. He's a guy. Is he an untouchable for me? No. Not if you really break it down. Is anybody outside of Hart? No. The fact that we have one guy on an untouchables list and we're supposed to be win now, that's scary. Like, that's why I'm ready to hit the dump button, because I don't see it. We can just force it and hope for the best, but that's not a good strategy going forward. And if you want to even talk about Ellis is hurt, well, we knew he was injury prone. That's information we had. As much as we all wanted him, we knew that was a thing and this could happen. So we can't give them a pass on that either. So I guess, and I don't know if they move Coots. I don't know if there's a team that would be like, yeah, we'll take that contract and those years on from what we see. I don't know. They might just be stuck, and it might not be the worst thing. They might be able to turn it around. I'm saying the word might way too much, and from what we've seen, I don't see it. And when they start playing the big teams again, it's not like when they played Tampa and Carolina, at least recently, they were losing in overtime or whatever. They were getting blown out. Absolutely blown out. It's
7-1.
7-1. Like, they just can't even compete with those teams. They can't keep up with those teams. They're in another one or two tiers below those teams. And for the money they've put out, the assets they've spent to be that many tiers below, yeah, it's time to hit the dump button, if you ask me. These couple of wins against these bottom-dwelling teams, this doesn't do it for me.
Now, speaking of tears, that's why the bags really came on. People didn't want to be seen crying for their team. The bag thing, the bag thing. But I remember I was talking on last week's show that goes back to like the New Orleans Saints, and then Shep chimed in and said the unknown comic from the Gong Show back in the 70s. His jokes are so bad, like really corny jokes. He used to wear a bag over his head, so you wouldn't recognize him and like kick the shit out of him or something, like when you saw him on the street. But let me tell you let me give you a stat. I'm not a big stat guy, but this speaks to me. Oh, Maharaji. The Flyers are last in expected goal differential, minus 14.44. That is the number. They were 32nd in the league. Okay. And when you talked about, mentioned the Tampa game, I was a guest on the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, and I held up like the screen of the heat map of that 7-1 game. And I think I have it. I'll show it to you guys. Unfortunately, people can't see that here on the show. But what it was, I'll show you guys. It was like beyond, if you can see that, the Flyers versus Tampa, and you have all this activity around the Flyers net by Tampa, and then the Flyers are like in bum Egypt, 2 feet within the blue line. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I mean, this is the problem, that nobody's got the stones to get near the net where you have to score in the NHL. Well, I mean, from time immemorial, but certainly with the defensive systems deployed now in 2021 and 2022.
Jim brings it up all the time. How do the Flyers get 35 shots in the 2 periods? It's because they're all low percentage shots. The shots we give up are all high danger chances, are usually hitting off of somebody, then the post, and going out into the stands, or we're getting scored on flat out. And that again is not sustainable. Yeah, we'll get by teams like Ottawa and Montreal, which we really didn't. We lost to Montreal. They should have won that game 5-2. You're going to have those games, and then you're going to come in and play the big boys, and they're going to continue to embarrass us. And one thing I'll never understand about, and I do truly believe it's a small portion of the fan base, at least according to Twitter. I don't know how you have an issue with the bags personally. We do a podcast, we do it live. You see our faces. We're not actually hiding. There is no cowardly. We're not hiding. We're here. Hello. We do it every week. Multiple shows, post-game shows. We're wearing it because what we're watching is embarrassing. What we're watching is continuously embarrassing. I don't think the Flyers lost games this badly back in, 06, 07?
Yeah.
Like when they were in last place, they didn't lose games this badly. And when it was starting to get out of hand, they started hurting people. They started hitting. They cared. They had pride. They had actual pride. This team doesn't care. When that happens, they just, well, there's always tomorrow. And I can't stand that. It makes it sickening to watch. So yeah, that's where the bags came from. Like this product is a joke. When they're losing, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, if you ask me. And you're gonna see it once they start playing real teams again. I don't care who's back. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah, 06, 07 was definitely the nadir. I mean, when you're screaming at, come on, Afinosenkov, I mean, like,
oh my God.
That's a name from the past.
That is a good name.
But the thing was, hope sprung eternal when he made that Coburn trade. He gets rid of Zhitnik to Atlanta, really bad trade by Waddell, and then they get Upshaw in here. It's like there's a spark, a flame, and then they sign Briere, and it's like I said earlier, they started all over. They need those kind of balls at GM, and I don't think Dave Scott is going to let Chuck Fletcher roll the dice. I mean, I like what Chuck did to try and salvage and make some of the changes. And we talked about earlier about culturally, the way they fall apart. I mean, everybody in the league, I mean, a couple of years ago, right before the 2020 playoffs, a league executive came out in The Athletic and said that the Flyers, all you have to do with them is just get ahead of them, and they start getting rattled and falling apart. So for a league executive to come out in a national publication like that, it just goes to show you what we're seeing is what they're seeing as well. And it's only gotten worse since then, because that was the best season they've had in I don't know, since 2012. So, and that was the best of the Flyers. So I think that the question now, I think we all agree that they got to, they needed to sweep this thing clean or hit the dump button, as you said, Jack, because there's, there are players that are worth assets. Drew is worth something. Look, I'll go there. I think Provorov, Sanheim. I was just watching last night, and I was like, hey, TK was active, but he shot high and wide on the power play again. He got lots of chances. I was hoping a guy like Atkinson would show him how it's done. I mean, his ethic, and I love that little guy. He's a streaky scorer, but I thought it was a good trade, and it's kind of one of the positive things. And let's be honest, Risto. I wanted them to go out and get his ex-teammate Reinhardt, put him in as a center insurance for what they paid for Risto. Okay, but that didn't happen. Risto is playing to the best of his ability, which, he's got a 10-set head and, he's got the Tarzan body, but he's doing a good job. But it's not going to be enough. It's like just like they crumbled with Niskanen out of the lineup, with Ellis out of the lineup. I mean, that's their ceiling. He's in the lineup, and they make a nice run, get into the playoffs, and maybe they get lucky, but that's as far as it's going to go. So the question, Jim, becomes, it's like, is Dave Scott really the big obstacle in that he's just in that make the playoffs mode, let's get the playoff revenue, and oh, by the way, if that happens, you never know what happens in NHL playoffs.
I think the next coaching hire will tell you a lot about the direction maybe that the team is going to go. I think it's interesting that I don't even know if was it the Flyers that said Mike Yeo is going to be the coach for the rest of the season? Did they officially announce that?
Reported that. I don't think they officially announced that yet.
So I thought that was interesting. It makes sense if you put any stock into the narrative that, they didn't want to fire AV because he's got 2 years left on his contract, and, they didn't want to eat any of the money in a pandemic era or whatnot. So if you look at it from that, kind of lame point of view, it makes a lot of sense to let Mike Yeo ride out the season as head coach, right? This way you don't have to bring on anybody else and pay somebody else. I do think, though, the next coach of this team will tell you the direction that they want to go, depending on who they hire. I really don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. They're a middle of the road team with the middle of the road roster, with middle of the road players. It's a bunch of second and third line guys. There are some bright spots, but you can't win a game with 2 or 3 guys a night having a good game. You need the team to collectively play well, and that just doesn't happen as often as you'd like. They're literally a 500 team right now. They're beating the bad teams and they lose against the good teams. So like you and Jack are saying, even if they do make the playoffs, they're going to get matched up against Carolina or Washington. It's not going to be good. Those are heavy teams that play hard. Carolina's taken on the personality of Rod Brind'Amour. It's amazing to watch them play because you're watching, like 24 Rod Brind'Amours out there. Washington, always dangerous. Ovechkin, Peter Laviolette. I don't know. What are when you think of Carolina and Washington, you know who they are. You know what the identity of the team is. When you think of the Flyers, what are they?
Bob Clark said that last year in that interview with Zach Kinderchuk. He said, I mean, the way he is, I'm not sure they have an identity, And I'm like,
Still.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like, I was kind of thinking about that when we were kind of putting some notes together. Like, that's what they really need. I mean, they need speed. They need skill. They need a different leadership group. But they need to forge an identity, like Jim's saying, Jack, because it's like Washington's going to bring it. They got some high-end skill, but they are a nasty team to play against. And now that they have championship experience, they're not going to fold. They're not going to choke. You got Carolina's speed, skill, precision, and it's balls to the walls. They're playing 100 miles an hour. The Flyers are like trying to learn how to play in 5-man units. If you pause the screen, you got to see 4 or 5 Flyers. And that's how I did that a couple times last night. I'm like, hey, first period. Yeah, there's 4, 3, 3.5, 4, 5. Okay. And then the second period is like 1, 2. It's like we're struggling to even do that.
Yeah. Hey, and real quick, you look at some of the acquisitions that Carolina's made over the last couple seasons, and you're looking at players like Vinny Trocheck, not the most skilled player, right? Not a point per game guy, but a guy that's going to work his ass off, right? A guy like Tony DeAngelo, maybe a crappy person, say whatever you want to say about him. Good hockey player. They got him at a discount price. Guy's almost a point per game player. 21 points in 22 games this season.
Yeah. Are they missing Dougie Hamilton for $9 million?
No. Ask New Jersey how that's working out for them. Nino Niederreiter, another great trade a couple years ago they made with Minnesota. Hang on. There's a couple more here I want to mention.
Nikas is pretty good.
Who was that?
Nikas.
Oh, right.
Nature's.
Yeah, they draft well too. Seth, Jack, you know all about this guy.
I love how they draft. Seth Jarvis, baby.
Aho, they took Aho. We took Konechny ahead of Aho. The whole league did that, but I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I mean, like a player like Brady Shea, I thought he was a very solid player with New York. Carolina swooped in. They knew that New York had to move a player, and they bring in a guy like Brady Shea, very serviceable. I think top 4 defenseman. They brought in hardworking players that fit what they want to do on the ice. We look at the Flyers. They bring in Kevin Hayes. They bring in a Ryan Ellis, a Cam Atkinson, and it's kind of still like, what are you trying to make here? You have all these pieces, and you want to play this style. It's like square peg, round hole. You know what I mean? Like things don't fit.
One of the most impressive things that Carolina does is the way they can just bring in players on defense and actually lose players like Justin Falk and guys of that nature and change people. A lot of people forget that they actually drafted Hannafin. They had Fox in their organization and whatnot, and they just keep churning these guys out. And they're able to either add on offense or not sign the big guy to the big deal and just replenish from within. In one case, they take a flyer on what's his name, like you stated earlier, and that helps save a ton of money. They've even gone cheap in goal for the most part. They got roasted for letting Ninkovich, was it? Go to
Nedeljkovic.
Go to Detroit, but they just restock the cupboard. They don't spend a ton in free agency, and they're the top of the division, a damn good division. Well, the Flyers are in the division, so how good could it be? But there's a lot of talent in this division, and it's like that's what you need to do. And they got this coach. I remember when Brind'Amour was hired, it felt like he's a Carolina guy, and he never was going to leave there. They don't really. Their owner's always been accused of not wanting to spend, and man, they were leaps and bounds ahead of where the Flyers are right now. It's unbelievable.
Well, I speak to that. I mean, you still have to go back to, like, if you're going to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, you want to call them kind of like they were a dynasty team before Tampa. That goes back to Dale Talon. So Dale Talon couldn't seal the deal, and they brought in Bowman. Maybe, I don't think Bowman's that great, but for whatever reason, Talon moves on. I think the same thing really applies with Carolina in terms of Ron Francis really did lay down this, what I used to call the baton death march of rebuilds, because it did take him a real long time to get this thing rolling. And he had a big battle with ownership. And then I think when the new guy came in, he's the one that let go of Francis. But by then the seeds were sown, and you had that great scouting staff like you guys are talking. I mean, they just turned guys over like Tampa does now too. I mean, Tampa lost like their whole third line, but they had guys like Ratchuk and what's his name? Radish.
Yeah, Joseph. Who's the guy from Robbinsville? Hey, oh God, he scored the goal to put a
Colton.
Colton. Right.
And like they just stepped in, they were ready. The Flyers couldn't do anything comparable like that. The only ready-made player they had who's kind of young and came up through the ranks was Allison. And unfortunately, he's had injury problems, including he's got some kind of upper body injury now. But that speaks to better scouting, better coaching, more, synergy throughout the entire organization that just it's truncated with the Flyers. Like you said, round peg, square hole on the ice, round peg, square hole with like what Chuck Fletcher may want to do versus what Dave Scott needs in terms of revenue for Comcast, and the disconnect with the fans and the season ticket holders compared to what it used to be. Everything is disjointed, and how the hell in the world are they going to get together? And I guess, Jack, I would ask you, if they did make that move to hit that dump button, is Chuck Fletcher the right guy? Do you think that he's learned enough from his experiences prior to coming with the Flyers that he could execute that kind of a plan?
I don't think so. I mean, anything's possible. If you look at his draft record, he tends to be first round or bust. Not much drafted in later rounds. I think Zucker was a second round pick. Alex Tuck, I believe he took him deep. Other than that, he doesn't hit a whole lot. His trades are 50-50. He traded away, I don't know how young Brent Burns was at the time, but I just don't know if I trust his ability to recognize talent. He pretty much spent a long time in Minnesota, and the furthest they ever got was maybe one Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, mostly they were first, second round and out. And for what I've seen here in Philly, he's been able to turn over a lot of the roster, but ultimately he hasn't fixed the main issue with the core. And do I really see him being able to rebuild? His biggest rebuild moves he made in Minnesota were signing Zach Parise and Suter to those mega deals that was really pushed by ownership and a really unique situation. And the cap's not even set up the same as it was back then. So I mean, I liked when the Flyers, I heard they were interviewing Bill Zito. I was like, that's a new age thinking guy. He's learning under Kekalainen, who has been known to do a lot with very little. And the Flyers, which scares me about ownership, is they weren't really interested in, from what I heard, he was more like they almost had to interview somebody else before they went ahead and hired Fletcher because they knew him. It's like, well, and now Zito's in Florida doing nice things. And I would much rather have a new age thinking guy than Fletcher. I just don't see it from the drafting perspective, from the asset management perspective. If you want to go for it now, I actually would lean that's probably more in his. I think he's more set to do that than he is to rebuild. I think that Flyers brought in Fletcher to go for that, not to rebuild. So I don't really have confidence in him being the one to do that.
Yeah, Zito is a lost opportunity. I remember Dan talking about him, and he's, again, kind of takes a different view, and he used to be a player agent as well, so he's seen a lot of different sides of things. And you're right, Jarmo Kekalainen has done a good job without a lot of resources in Columbus, and it's a tough nut to crack right now with the Flyers. So I guess, Jim, let's just start taking a look at this season. Like they've had recent success, although, again, what we saw last night, it was a very uneven effort. And when things started going wrong, they really had to get a lucky goal to even tie the game to get it into overtime. But listen, we'll take it. This is how streaks begin either one way or the other. You get a little luck for, or a little bit of luck against. But how do they make? What do you think they do to get the most out of this year before waving the white flag and doing whatever?
I mean, if they could play more periods like they did in the first period last night, that'd be a start. If they could do that more consistently, I think Mike Yeo even came out and said, it's a work in progress. There's going to be good and bad, but the goal is to have more good than bad. He didn't exactly say that, but in summary, it was get things as close to right as possible. And I'm never gonna. I'm the type where I always want them to win. And I know we're all the same way. We just want to see them win and do well and get into the playoffs and, win a couple rounds. And we want to see a Stanley Cup ultimately. There has been bright spots in the since Mike Yeo's taken over, I guess. I've seen a noticeable difference in a guy like Travis Konechny. Maybe not so much in the defensive end, which is kind of another story. I'm going to kind of try to stay positive a little bit, but he's certainly buzzing around in the offensive zone, which is what you want from Travis Konechny, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if Travis Konechny is not playing defense as long as he's putting the puck in the net, and 17 points in 29 games overall is not cutting it. However, since Mike Yeo was named, coach as relief of Alain Vigneault, Travis Konechny, 7 assists in 7 games. That's something, right? It's something. Maybe the goals eventually come. Cam Atkinson has looked good in spurts since Mike Yeo's taken over. Had a great game against New Jersey. I think it was Tuesday night. Looked okay again last night against Ottawa. Giroux's been the same guy. I think Van Riemsdyk had 5 points in 4 games or something like that. So maybe he's coming to life a little bit. I mean, we know he's streaky. He is what he is. A guy that, and this is going to sound a little nuts, that because he's only got 2 goals, 9 points in 29 games. But I think we are kind of seeing a player blossom before our eyes is Travis Sanheim. And I'm not going to make a huge deal about Travis Sanheim, but I think we could listen back to this episode in a couple weeks or months and be like, Jim, what the hell were you thinking? But I think he's finally starting to come into his own a little bit. I'm not sure if there was a switch that somebody hit or if somebody's in his ear pumping him up a little bit, or maybe it's just playing with the same defensive partner, through 29 games, 28 games, whatever it is. But he looks confident, right? He looks strong on his skates, and we weren't saying that a couple weeks ago. We were like, man, Travis Sanheim is really bringing down this Sanheim-Risto pair. But I like what I'm seeing from Sanheim. They're going to need a strong second pairing, right? And that's a positive.
Could I just interject something with Sanheim?
Sure.
I'm thinking Todd Pinkston when T.O. comes in. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Just like I know he's got a higher ceiling than Todd Pinkston did as a receiver, but just with Risto, kind of like being that physical presence makes him a little bit braver.
Yeah.
Plus, the idea that he got involved in the Players Association this year, I think he took over for JBR, just kind of speaks to maybe a little bit of maturity. So
sure, absolutely, and you need that from guys like Sanheim. He's not the kid on the team anymore.
That's right.
And not that I want to move guys out, not that I want to move players like Giroux and Couturier out, but when you move guys like that, all of a sudden, these younger guys step into these roles, right? And they take these leadership responsibilities and these roles. They should be doing that already, even with Giroux here and Coots here. Maybe that says something about Giroux and Coots that these guys they're not stepping up. I don't want to speculate anything, but I'll move on a little bit more. You look at a guy like Oscar Lindblom. Oh, yeah. He's found his legs the last couple games. I don't think he's been playing horrible this season, but nowhere close to where we were hoping he'd be. I think maybe in the last week, we're seeing that a little bit more. I mean, that pass last night to Giroux, that's confidence right there. He put it right on his tape, So again, I'm not going to sit here and say Stanley Cup, but there are bright spots we're seeing. And I know the competition the last maybe week and a half is weak, but hey, confidence does a lot for people, So maybe they beat up on some of these lesser teams They head into some games against Pittsburgh, Washington. Guys are feeling good about each other. Who knows? Maybe it continues to build.
Yeah, I mean, it's like bringing a fighter along. He can't fight the top guys right away. He's got to get his confidence and learn from his mistakes. And it's almost with Yo, it's kind of like it was the right time for him to come in. And, they went in, they had a decent win versus Vegas. But for the most part, they've been beating up on the Little Sisters of the Poor. And now next week, we're going to have to find out, what they're made of. If they can, if they're going to lose their shit, if things go wrong against these teams are going to be brutal, Jack. I mean, it's unforgiving because if they see the Flyers kind of losing it like they have in the past, they're just going to step all over them.
And that's what I'm afraid of. And I hope that Jim is right and that they did get some, what do they call that? Like the warm-up games, as you were kind of saying, like oh my God, Washington and Pitt just this week. And then they kind of go for a little bit. I guess that's not bad. The Christmas break might do them some good, I guess. But I don't see them. These two teams are playing well, and I can, even at home, I can't see them doing too much. I think we're going to see what we're used to, the status quo of this team. They're going to fall to pieces a little bit. We said that once they get behind, they fall apart. My way to play the Flyers is full court press. They're in a situation where they have the puck and you pressure them, they'll make mistakes. The Flyers, they don't have an identity. The identity I give them is they're irresponsible, immature, and schizophrenic with the puck. Like they're just, they're so easy to play against. It feels like, especially if you're a talented team, they're fragile, they're soft. And I don't think that's changed just because they beat up on these teams. Like, they did beat up on the Devils. The Devils also beat them twice in the same in November, and I believe I'm sorry, it was November or late November, early December. Montreal should have won that game. They lose that in a shootout. Ottawa had to get a very, very lucky goal even to get to overtime.
Yep.
Luckily beat them in overtime. If that game goes to a shootout, they probably lose. So I'll take the W. I'll take the points. But do I see them as turning the corner? Not quite yet. And is Hart even going to play on Tuesday? Like, is he still in protocols, COVID code protocol or whatnot, because undisclosed illness, or I don't know where they're at with that. And there's too many questions. And if they start losing again, no matter what the reason, they could fall off. And I don't think they got enough going on in between the years to turn things around on a consistent basis.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue with that. You're rooting for guys and Jim went through a litany of players that if things don't work out well this year, it's like, hey, why don't we have these little victories, watching this guy get his game together, watching this player, whether it's to make them a better trade asset. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I was watching Sanheim and Konechny, and I was thinking, yeah, I'd trade both of them right now for a center, someone we could count on, because they're both young, and they're both the kind of guys that are attractive to teams that feel like they could come into the lineup, hit the ground running with less pressure on them on a better team. But really, how many teams have a center that they're willing to give up? It would have to be a prospect, so it would be a leap of faith. That means you got to trust the Flyers scouting staff. And I'm not saying it's a bad scouting staff, but it's not the best either. I mean, they don't go for things. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit riffing here because I'm thinking out loud, because I'm thinking, how do you not go for Cole Caulfield when you have no flash in the lineup and you get a safe defenseman? And I'm thinking, well, maybe the idea is they're not sure about Sanheim at that juncture, and let's draft somebody who could come in case Sanheim or Myers doesn't work out. And now they're overthinking it. Cole Caulfield is maybe, because he's so small, maybe it's a possible bust pick. But clearly, the hockey IQ off the chart. His instant offense, his excitement, it's star potential. And it's this kind of, thinking that playing it safe, kind of like Hextall did. It's you got to go for things. And that's one of the reasons I really, on the other side of the coin, I like the Tyson Foerster pick, because it was a little bit of a gamble. And even though he's hurt this year, that's the opposite side of the coin, Jim.
Well, you could argue that, and this goes to player development again, he shouldn't have been playing with the Phantoms, right? He should have been playing with kids his size, his skill level. I mean, it was what happened? He dislocated his shoulder, right?
Yeah.
So you could argue that they mismanaged him. He shouldn't have been playing with the Phantoms again. I mean, last year was the exception. There was no Canadian Hockey League, so you want him playing games. So playing with the Phantoms this year, things are more normal. Put him back where he belongs. Why is he playing with the Phantoms? He's not going to be on the Flyers in the next season or so. So it's kind of like, what was the plan there? As far as playing it safe, I forget who I spoke to, but they kind of explained the whole reasoning for the Cam York pick, and it was because there weren't as many good defensemen in the next draft. So the thought was get the defenseman in that draft, the defenseman that they wanted. And I think in the second round, they ended up getting a pick back, and they went and drafted Bobby Brink, who was like Cam York light, whatever. That's fine. Explain the pick. Makes sense. I understand what they were going for there. Having said that, we mentioned earlier in the show, Chuck Fletcher was a safe hire, right?
Right.
Well, he's making safe picks, and he's making safe moves, and he's not the guy that's going to go for it. And, maybe he tried to do that in the offseason by unloading Phil Myers and Nolan Patrick and, bringing in a really good defenseman in Ryan Ellis, who, as Jack mentioned, came with, hey, this guy is injury prone. There's a chance he could get hurt. And we're 29 games into a season. He's played what, 5?
4 games or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't want to see safe anymore. I want a guy that's going to go out and it's funny because Paul Holmgren was kind of that guy. And towards the end, we were all kind of like, man, I can't take this Paul Holmgren guy anymore. Andy McDonald, $5 million a year. What was he thinking? But a guy who's going to go out and do things, sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. Yeah. I would much rather have that, I think, over a guy that's going to play it safe, be a 500 general manager. Maybe we sneak into the playoffs. Maybe we win a round and we get smoked in the second round. I don't know. I can't watch. That's the bags. That's where the bags come from. I can't watch that anymore. I can't keep going in that direction because you know what the outcome's going to be. It's just going to be blah, Yeah,
that's the thing, Jack. And we'll kind of wrap this up and get into some of our Flyer holiday memories. But it's just the idea that being like having 06, 07 was bad enough. But it's like they were so bad, you knew something good was coming around the corner. Right. This is like you can't get off this treadmill. You're just going nowhere. You're like the gerbil. You know what I mean? Hey, Jerry Penacoli, where's that gerbil? You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know what. It's frustrating. That makes me want to put the bag on more than one bad year.
That's what it is. It's frustration, and it's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. There's so much that you're just disappointed about. There's so much from top to bottom. I mean, front office things, organizational things, to the players, to the freaking mascot, to the promotional things, the disrespect to season ticket owners. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff that really bothers me about this organization. And without saying that, I mean, I like the Flyers, the hockey team. But there's a lot about this organization that I despise, truthfully. I just don't like. They're kind of more corporate America than they are Flyers hockey, if that makes sense. That's how they come off to me.
It's night and day from what I grew up with. Night and day. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And what scares me, and you see this from a lot of people who have issues with the bags, like your team, no matter what, you're exactly what Comcast is looking for. They're going to continue to play it safe, do just enough, to get by, to get their money, to sniff at the playoffs, but not really have to care too much and give it all. They'll have fans like that who will just show up blindly. Yeah, they're our hockey team. Doesn't matter what they do, and we're not going to see any significant change. We're going to be stuck in purgatory, and we'll never have those high end guys. We'll have high floor guys, no high ceilings, just safe guys. And yeah, we'll be probably the doormat of the division until we get serious change in here.
Well, it's possible because the mediocrity, as we saw, bred a culture of failure. So it's like you may have more talent than the other guy. We've seen this. But when you've been doing the same thing and knocking your head against the wall, you're a human being. You're not a robot, and you just start getting discouraged, and you're not going anywhere. And that's why you have the same old cycle where you say, oh, this team, I look at this team on paper, they should be playing better. Yeah, but they're coming to work every day, and they're just like one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, and it's like they're going nowhere.
Right.
So, I don't know, man. We beat this one to death. But it speaks to the frustration. But, gents, let's you want any final statement in regard to that before we wrap? Yeah.
I was going to say, it makes it tough for us because we love this team and we love to talk about them and we like to have a good time. I mean, it's the Flyers, it's at the very least, it's a distraction, and we want to be positive, but we need to have positive things to talk about. And lately there hasn't been that much positivity with this organization. So that's it.
No, I mean, you guys, getting to the point of being masochists. I don't know how you do more than one show a week because I just don't know how you do it, man.
Well, we've been talking a lot lately. We're like, maybe we need to find different topics to come up with during shows here because 60 minutes a night talking about this Flyers team might be kind of tough,
Yeah, you need like an Oprah segment. Wow, 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 wow.
Actually, yeah, we might. That's a good idea, actually.
Elsewhere in the NHL, let's look at some really good players for a change. Wow, 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 wow.
I mean, when the Flyers play, you get a goal, you get a goal, you get a goal.
Yeah, it's for everybody else.
So, gents, we're heading into the holiday season, and I just thought I'd try to, kind of get you to search in your memory banks, like anything like Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Is like there's one thing or two games or events or what have you that stand out that come to mind this time of year. Jack, let me go to you first. If you have anything comes to mind related to the Flyers, something you'll always kind of remember.
So this is the easy one for me, and I actually didn't even read this on the pre-notes, so this is great. This is a true memory. I didn't have to look this up. It was New Year's Eve. I want to say Eve. And it was like, I think 1999. Flyers obliterated the Vancouver Canucks. It was like a late game. I was young. I think I was 10 years old, maybe a little bit older. I don't know. And I was watching the game by myself. It was the holidays, all from school. And I think they won 9-1. I know for a fact that Trent Klack scored a goal, and I know Leclerc scored. Like they just unloaded on Vancouver, and it was a really great game I watched by myself. I think it was a later start too because I think they played in Vancouver. So could be wrong about that part, but I feel like I was up late watching the game, not just for New Year's. And I have always remembered that game. I thought it was great.
Well, you just don't want thunder. That was it. It is actually December 31st, 1997. So it was like the 98
Oh, wow.
season.
I was much younger.
Yeah. It was 8-0.
8-0.
8-0. And Leclerc, on his way to a 51-goal season, scored goals number 30 and 31. And they just waxed the friggin' Vancouver Canucks, a game I will never forget. It was so much friggin' fun.
Leclerc's my all-time favorite player as well. So that 2-goal night, like all day. I love it.
Yeah. So I kind of covered mine. I'll see if I got one more for myself. But Jim?
Well, that was kind of when they played like the Flames or the Canucks, like every New Year's, right?
Right. Like they were out in the West Coast. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days. For me, what stands out, I was lucky enough to go to the Winter Classic up in Boston when they played in Fenway, and it was a cool experience. I went up with some friends. Obviously, we hung out for New Year's Eve the night before, but just the environment. I mean, everyone was there to watch their team, but it was kind of cool. Like everyone was there just to take in the game. Obviously we wanted our teams to win, but it was more the camaraderie between fans and stuff. And sitting in Fenway for a hockey game and not a baseball game was pretty sweet. I'm glad I got to go up and experience that stadium. The city of Boston is a really cool city. And yeah, that's it. That's what really stands out to me.
Cool. Cool. Well, I'm going to go with my fallback, and my fallback is December 27th, 1969. That is the first time, and I did verify, I had to look this up. That is the first Flyers game I can remember watching. It was a 2 tie in the old Montreal Forum. Bernie Parent was in net his first tour of duty with the Flyers before he got traded and he came back. And Rogie Vachon was in goal for Montreal, the defending champion Montreal Canadiens, who went on and were dethroned that year by the Boston Bruins. But it was first of the Esposito 2 cups that they won in that era. So, yeah, so that's like a secondary memory going way, way back. I was 9 years old or 10. Actually, I just turned 10. So, yeah. So,
I'm jealous, man. You got to watch some good hockey back then, huh? You had to watch a couple cups.
Yeah. I did. I went to the parade in 75, and we went down to JFK, and that was back in the streaking era. So people, women were, taking their tops off, and out comes a problem. Like, I'm 15.
You had to see a bunch of cups then.
Yeah. No cups. Get my measuring stick. No, but I mean, it's I was 15. What do you want from me? But it was fun, man. It was a blast. And I remember they were in the middle, like in the middle of the field, and we're all around them. It's a gigantic stadium. It's what had Live Aid and all that later on. And they were saying, if we could, keep the team together, we'll be winning for the next 10 years. And, it only lasted about 5. They went to the Cup in 80 and they lost the Islanders. But, it's good time.
Lucky.
Yeah,
I bet. I wonder what that's like.
Yeah, well, with the current situation, we're on that treadmill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
that's the worst part, man.
Yes, this might be the last O&B before the new year. I just wanted to wish everybody the greatest holiday. Certainly, we're not going to get to you before Christmas. Have a wonderful Christmas, and the Flyers next week. Losing my voice here. Tuesday they play at home versus Washington. Thursday versus the Penguins in Pittsburgh. Good luck with that one. Then they have like about 5 days off until the 29th of December, and we'll probably hit you up right around then. So, gents, let me get your social media coordinates in line and remind everybody about hwhockey.net and your podcast.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack. You can go first.
At Jack_HW Radio. As you said it, we're hwhockey.net and my other show, as well as mine and Jimmy's show. We have Full Circle just released today. It's more of a Metro show. Please check that out.
Cool.
Yeah, you can find everything, like Isaiah said, on hwhockey.net. We do a lot of work on there, a lot of site maintenance, a lot of articles coming out. Check out some of our fantasy articles, pregame, postgame stuff, a lot of shows. You can follow me on Twitter. I always forget my handle. At Jim Ike, IKEHW. And give the podcast account a follow, at FlyersHW.
Cool. And you can follow me at Isaiah, ISAIAH_520. Isaiah, don't forget the underscore, 520. Wonderful, controversial, thought-provoking takes sometimes. And, of course, the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck at O&B Puck. And with that, until next time, hopefully Dan and Jeff can make it back. Everybody have a great holiday and take care.
Hey everybody, Isaiah here. Just a reminder that the O&B Puckcast and FlyersNittyGritty.com are brought to you by Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia. 4 decades of the best cheesesteaks and hoagies in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. And if you live down near 400 South Street, but you can't get over to Jim's, no problem. They use DoorDash and they'll deliver that delicious food right to your door. So remember, Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia for the best cheesesteaks and hoagies